Hi there, and welcome to today's video. My name's Corey J, and I'm a visual artist. I primarily work in acrylic paint, but I also do watercolor paint as well sometimes. In addition to painting, I am a teacher as well as a mentor for online media. Today's project is going to be on this celestial moon painting here. We're going to go through a couple different techniques during this class about how to create a star effect, how I got this halo effect around the moon, using different values and different colors together in the area of the clouds at the bottom there, and also how to get nice crisp line around the edge of your painting without your painter's tape bleeding or anything like that. So yeah, we got a lot to go over, and I am super excited that you're here. And again, for this class, we're going to use just the 3 primary colors as well as black and white, and we're going to use them to mix everything, all the colors that you see here. We're also going to use a couple additional supplies today. One is going to be a toothbrush. So if you have an old toothbrush lying around, that would be perfect. As well as we are also going to use some painting markers in the end, but they are completely optional and you do not need them. Okay, so without further ado, let's get painting. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to tape down our canvas paper. And for this piece, we're going to be bringing the paint all the way to the edge of the taping area here and covering the whole background. So you want to make sure that you overlap the tape the same amount on your paper equally all the way around, so that when you take the tape off at the end, you have an equal border all the way around. And also just make sure to push the tape down all the way around on your paper, just so that no water or paint seeps in underneath. Now we're going to do this next step. This is optional, but we're going to use this acrylic glazing liquid. And what we're going to do is we're going to just cover it, cover the tape where the tape meets the paper. Now again, like I said, this is optional, but this is going to help us get nice crisp lines when we remove the tape after. So any acrylic medium will work for this, but I'm going to use this acrylic glazing medium. It's nice and thin, and just apply it where the tape meets the paper. Okay, so next we're going to grab a yogurt container or some sort of bowl that's going to make our moon shape. We're just going to place it down, grab a pencil, and trace out the outside line of it here to make a nice guide for our moon. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to fill in the background with black paint. So you just want to grab some black here and paint all the way around the moon and then fill in the background. So I sped this up because we don't need to watch that whole thing, but basically you're gonna be pretty careful as you go around the moon and then just fill in the whole background. Now when I'm doing this, I'm loading up my paint brush with lots of paint so that I have a nice opaque layer. And you can see when you're done this layer, when it dries, if you need to do a second layer. I laid mine on pretty thick, so one layer was good enough for me, but you don't want to see any white lines or white little spots of the canvas peeking through here. So once you're done painting the whole background, once it dries, take a look and decide if you want to do a second layer. And one other thing is make sure that you're doing the majority of your brush strokes in the same direction. That'll make it lay down flat and dry nice and smooth. And yeah, so once you finish this, you just want to leave it to dry completely before you move on to the next step. Now the next step here, we're going to grab some sponges, and we're going to grab a bit of white, and we also going to grab a blob of blue, and we're going to start to make that little halo effect around the moon here. So basically what I'm going to start off doing is I'm going to overlap the areas where the black meets the white in the sun area here, sorry, in the moon area, and I'm going to do it in a circular motion. So I'm going to lay down some blue here in a circular motion and start to create this halo effect. Now I'm not concerned about the blue overlapping into the moon section because we're going to go over that with a nice thick layer of white after, and the moon has a lot of dips and intricacies, so there's going to be more detail on the moon that will cover that up later with other layers of paint, so we don't really need to worry about that. So our first order of business is doing the blue halo plane, and then we're going to start to mix a bit of white in with the blue and do the same thing, so it creates a bit of a gradient effect where you have just the pure blue all the way around to start, and then you go in with a bit of white and start to create that kind of gradient towards the center of the moon. And so here you can see I've also switched to a bit of a dab technique as instead of a circular motion here. And I'm just kind of dabbing it to make these little dots, kind of speckles of stardust, and illuminate into the atmosphere. So instead of doing the swooping technique again, I've just moved on to a bit of a dab technique here. Okay, next we are going to clean off our brush completely. It's really important to make sure that your brush is totally clean and that layer of halo that we just laid down is completely dry here. You want to make sure that you don't have any little black particles still in your brush from doing the black background with this brush, because they will transfer into the white. The white has to be totally pure here. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to fill in the moon area now. So you want to go and fill in the entire moon area where it hits the black there. And I like to use this 1-inch round brush for this and just take my time and go really slow. And also I'm going to load up the brush with lots of paint here. So this layer, the brush is completely full, and then the excess, you can see that I'm going to drag the excess into the center. The reason why I want my brush to be so full of paint is because I don't want it to skip at all, and I want a nice crisp line. And the way to achieve that crisp line is by having lots and lots of paint on your brush. And then again here, I find it easier when I'm doing circles to rotate the canvas if possible, so that my hand is still in a good position and it's not doing awkward twists and turns. And for the next little bit, you'll have to excuse my hair flowing into the shot as my fan was blowing in. Good reminder to have a fan on while you're painting here. But yeah, make sure you turn your canvas so that your hand's not awkward. You'll have a better angle to make that circle. And we'll just fill in the whole thing. And then once it's filled in, you want to let it dry. Next, we're going to grab some blue and some red here, and we're going to mix a deeper purple shade and start to create the craters in the moon and all the different shapes in the moon. Now, I'm going to pop up a photo reference here. I didn't follow this photo reference exactly for mine, but feel free to use it for yours to get where the dips and the colors are and that kind of thing. But basically, I'm going to start off by making the deepest tones. So I'm just going to take some blues and purples and mix in a bit of white here. And I'm going to start off with the darkest color that's going to be on the moon and make all the darkest points in the image. So all the little crater areas that are the deepest color, I'm going to start with those. And then for the rest of the time, I'm going to be doing the same technique where I'm just swirling my brush around, but I'm going to be adding in more paint as I go. So more different colors and then just kind of using the reference image as a guide. Now, when you get to the outside areas of the moon, you want to add in more white to your colors there so that they kind of blend out towards the edge of the moon where it's going to be the lightest. And then the colors in the center will be the deepest. And there are also areas like along the bottom, you can see more in the photo here, along the bottom of the moon, there's a darker area there. So you want to get in all those darker areas as well as some midtones and some lighter areas. And you just achieve that by mixing in some white and playing around with it. And I like to mix the colors as I go, as well as mixing them right on the page while they are still wet. And then when you get to a point where you feel like, you know, some areas needed to be a little bit darker, you can go back in with a deeper color like I did here just to finish it up a little bit. And then just keep going back and forth between your reference photo and your paper and layering the paint as much as you can until you get to a part where you feel like it looks good. And then last but not least, you can add in some little white bits, and yeah, we got a bit of a moon going on here, which is awesome. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to start on the cloud area. So you want to leave the moon to dry, and actually we can just continue on right away because it's a different area that we're working on now. So we're going to start by mixing a purple color for this section, and as you can see, I'm twirling my brush as I mix, and I added in a bit of water here too because I want the paint to be a little bit translucent. So we're just going to go ahead and create the cloud section in the bottom here, and I'm going to start with this darker color and just move my brush around kind of in a random way, creating that kind of fluffy cloud shape that it has a kind of interesting form to it. And at times here, I'm going to start with the darker areas here, but then I'm also going to grab a bit more water and just pull it across the color that's still on my brush. And the reason why I'm going to do that is because I want it to be a bit more translucent. I want more of the black to come through. And as you can see, when you're working on a black background, the lighter the color is, the more intense it is. Just like if you're working on a white background and you use black, it's going to show up really strongly. So you want to kind of reverse that idea in your mind when you're doing colors on a dark background. The lighter the color, the more intense it's going to be. And with these shapes, you just want to make a bunch of different little poofy shapes, roll your brush around, do some more that are a bit translucent and some that are a bit opaque, and then just kind of get your base shape down. And then for the rest of it, you can see that I've sped this up because it's took quite a while to do, but basically I'm going to take this red and white color and make some highlights on the clouds, but then I'm also going to mix in some purple as I go, and I'm just going to use the red on the tops of the clouds, so just creating that kind of highlighted shape there, and then work back in with some purples, some mid-tone purples to create some dimension in the clouds. So really what's important to think about is the strength of your colors and the opacities and where you want to place them. Now you don't want to cover the painting completely, and you don't want your colors to be flat because you want to see some of the background in. So as a rule of thumb, you can do your deeper colors first to create the base of where your shape's going to be, and then you can go in with red and white kind of pinky mixture to do some highlights there, and then go back in with a mid-tone purple to create the middle part of the cloud, and leave some of the black background here to show through so that it gives the illusion that they're kind of fading off into the background. Now if you want them to fade into the background, you can also lay down a color and then mix it with black, because the more you mix with black, the more it fades into the background. And yeah, And then you'll see towards the end here, I wanted to do some highlights in the center section of the clouds, coming from the moonlight. And so what I did was I mixed in a little bit of yellow into this pinky color here. And you'll see that I'm going to lay it down just across the tops of the center areas to kind of create the illusion of the moonlight hitting just the center area here. So next I'm going to go in and we're going to create some stars. So I always put a glove on for this part because there's no way that your fingers can't get messy here because we're going to be flicking the brush with our thumb. Then I'm going to take this yogurt container, and you see that I just have a little bit of water in here to start. You can always add more, but you don't want to start with too much water. So I've got a little bit of water in there, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drop a little blob of white in here. And then this is what we're going to use to spray onto our painting to create the stars. So there's a little blob there of white. You can see I didn't use that much paint. You don't need that much because right now we're basically just creating a little slurry. Then I'm going to mix it together with my brush. I'm just going to mix it together until it's completely mixed. You don't want any globs here. Then I'm going to grab a little bit and tap off the excess into the container. I'm going to just take my thumb and rub it across the top with the paintbrush painting angled down. And you can see it creates these beautiful little sprays, perfect sizes. And then you can also see that a big drop of paint fell too. And I actually really like this technique where blobs of paint drop down from the brush too. So if you have a lot of water on your brush, you can just move your hand down like I'm doing here, and you'll see that a couple of those larger orbs will fall onto your page as well. And I think it's really great here to get varying sizes of stars. So you want those bigs and those smalls. So next I'm going to take these paint markers. This step's completely optional, but I find that it's really hard to get this little X down to create this little star effect with a paintbrush, with acrylic paint. You have to use a really tiny brush. So you can go ahead and try that with your brush, or you can grab one of these paint markers and do this little X effect to create these little sparkles. And I like to put them down kind of randomly across the page, even on top of the cloud area. And then I often put a little dot in a little circle in the center of them. I really like that kind of sparkle effect that it makes. And then I'm going to grab this more maroon, and I'm just going to create some more stars in the sky that have a bit of color. So you can definitely do this with a brush as well. But I like to incorporate the colors of the background of the piece back into the piece in the form of stars. Just to create that kind of illusion that the colors are reflecting off of the stars from the actual piece. So I just go in and add a whole bunch of dots everywhere with that color. And you can also do this with a purple as well. And then last but not least, we're going to go back in here with a bit of blue and a little bit of white, kind of to get the same color as the halo around the sun. Around the moon. And we're going to make a couple different stars here that have a blue halo around them. So you can see that I just tapped off the excess because I almost want my brush to be a little bit of dry brushy technique. So I just want a tiny bit of paint on my brush when I do this. But you can see that I'm just creating some circles here with this one blue color. And kind of just making them varying sizes and randomly across my page. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go back in and put a white dot in the center. So we're going to kind of mirror that moon halo, but with the stars to create the illusion of light sparkling off. So then I just go back in with this little orb, and I am putting a little white dot in the center. And here I'm just going to load up my brush and just touch the canvas just really lightly with that color. And I just really like the illusion of light dispersing here. And then if any of those globs that fell down dry, you can also put a little bit of white right in the center of them as well, and it'll be the purest white. And yeah. So next, we're going to wait for it to dry completely, and then we get to move to this really satisfying stage of removing the paint, the painter's tape, and you can see that, wow, like what a great job putting down that matte medium first. You can just see that the line is so crisp. Now, if you don't have that glazing medium, that's totally fine. You can just lay the tape down like normal, but you'll notice that you might have a little bit of a bleed underneath your tape. And yeah, that is our final piece today. I hope that you guys learned a couple different techniques that you can bring into your practice and that you had some fun doing this one. And yeah, I think it turned out really cool. So thanks for being here. I just want to show you one more way that you can create a kind of atmosphere, celestial vibe to one of your pieces. So this here is a piece I did called Dino Floss, and in the background you can see that there's this kind of like star effect that's kind of like galaxy-ish, and I just wanted to let you know that you can create this effect easily by just using a sponge. So I just took a couple different colors here. You can see the purple here and the light blue down at the bottom there, and I just created a sponge technique while dabbing a little bit of paint in onto my painting and kind of swirling it around and bringing it into kind of like a circular motion to create that effect. And I just used a couple different colors, and in order to make that effect kind of taper off into the background, you would just add some black into your paint. Because the background is black, to make something fade into the background, you would add black. So I used some of the colors really strongly, and then I kind of faded them out using black into the background. So that's another way that you can add kind of that celestial galaxy kind of look to one of your pieces. Okay, so that's it for today's tutorial. I hope you learned a lot today, and I can't wait to see what everybody comes up with. Don't forget to post about what you created. Share some images in the discussion so that we can all learn together. And I look forward to seeing you next class. Bye.